Hey guys, I want you to watch this clip of a professor giving college students a little bit of an education on the nuances and complexities of Israel and Palestinians. Check
Do
it
you
out.
believe in a two-state solution similar to that of the original, 1940 borders, or at least something like the Oslo Accords? Or do you think a one-state solution would bring more peace long-term?
You see, this is the Mediterranean. Here's Egypt. This is what I mean. You're gonna go through here. So if you say like, oh, there's been conflict in this region forever, people say this. I'm gonna respond to your question. But there's been conflict in this region forever. They've been fighting forever. This is Europe in the year 1000. Europeans have been fighting forever. That looks nothing like Europe today. The map of Europe has been changing constantly. The map of this area of Israel has been changing constantly. So when we say like, oh, there's conflict, people have been fighting forever, that's just justification to not really understand the nature of sociology. So this is Gaza right here, okay? And this is what's called the West Bank. And Jerusalem is right there. And Jerusalem was identified as the international community. So it was not going to be aligned with Palestinians. It was not going to be aligned with Israel. That has changed over time. And I'm not going to get into some of the details of the more recent politics, but this is the West Bank here. This region is completely closed off. Israel controlled this region here, and Israel controlled this region, which was primarily set aside for Palestinians. But Israel left the Gaza in the early 2000s and gave it over to the Palestinians. Hamas took over, and this is completely cut off. So the two-state solution would be this right here. So we have the West Bank, and we have Gaza, and then we have Israel proper, in which 25% of the people living in here are Arabs, okay? Arab Christians and Arab Muslims, but citizens of Israel. And one can make an argument for second-class status for many of them, and there are. I travel with my Arab friends in Israel, and I saw second class, but certain aspects were like, this isn't really fair, right? But nonetheless, so the idea is, well, could this work out? So Palestinians stay here, and the Israelis control this, Israel controls this, and then we work it out. You have these two states, and that's good. Or do we need to break down all these borders and bring Jews and Arabs together as one single nation living in peace? My response is, either one can lead to peace. It doesn't matter.
So I actually agree with his point, and I don't agree with a lot of what he's saying here, but his point is very simply, it's not about land. It's not a conflict over a piece of territory, but rather a conflict between two ideologies.
What matters is the people who are making the decisions believe that that is the best option to move forward, right? And what's exceptionally important, and that you all know this, so you think about this, a very small group of people can radically change the course of history and can radically change the course of peace. You know, when you go through airport security and you take your shoes off, that was because of one single human being who put a bomb in his shoes and then changed travel for billions of travelers because of that. One single human being. It doesn't take a lot to throw things off. My thing is, it's interesting how many people I hear talk about Palestinians in Gaza, what Palestinians in Gaza think, who never talked to or met a Palestinian in Gaza, or what Jews in Israel think, what Jews in the settlements in the West Bank think.
In Judea and Samaria, again, I don't agree with a lot of what this guy is saying, but what he's trying to say is that there's a lot more complex and nuance, and this isn't just about dividing up the territory in order to achieve peace. It's a much, broader conversation there.
And so what has happened here is over time in the West Bank, Jews have gone in and taken over certain areas of the West Bank. And sometimes in exchange, that it's like, okay, they're really living with and working alongside the Palestinians who are living there. And in other instances, taking over the land. And those of you who are Jewish, if you think the process of Jews, Jewish families and Jewish communities who are living on land in the West Bank and have built these communities, mostly walled communities, who did that with the openness and embrace of Palestinians and did it in a fair and democratic process. My guess is you've never been to the West Bank and you've never talked to people about how some of that unraveled. And I have friends and colleagues who live in some of those communities and are amazing human beings who are working alongside with and have immensely positive relationships with their Arab neighbors, are embraced by their Arab neighbors, and in turn embrace back. So if you say, oh, I support the Palestinians and these settlers all have to go, my guess would be you've probably never been there. I mean, you've probably never had conversations with people. You've probably not understood or seen the complexity of the relationships between people.
All right, so the main point I want to focus on here is that he's trying to say is this isn't just Israel versus the Palestinians or Arabs versus Jews or Jews versus Muslims. There's a much bigger conversation here. There's tons of misinformation, and this idea that, oh, all settlers are bad people is like crazy. And this idea that, Jews are just taking over and occupying the land and have terrible relationships with the Muslims in Judea and Samaria, or the Arabs in Judea and Samaria, is just, quite frankly, an oversimplification. So instead of looking at it, in each individual case, they like to paint a broader picture and try to libel Israel and say, oh, Israel is doing all these terrible things. They never did anything good ever. If you ask a pro-Palestinian and you ask them, did an Israeli ever do anything good? No, they never did. Even with all the inventions we've created, they probably use half of them, and they have whole boycott lists to avoid using them. And yet they won't even admit a slight, Jewish people doing anything good. And I think that this is a big problem that a lot of people have fallen into, is instead of looking at it as, oh, let's look at the practical realities on the ground and how we can move forward. Instead, it's just, oh, you versus us, and we're never going to get anywhere. And I don't believe in giving up land. Like he said, it has nothing to do with land. It has much more to do with how to, both sides believe the best way to move forward is. And so what he's saying is, instead of going and making a two-state solution with this Western mindset of everybody needs to get together and everything needs to work out, maybe you look at it from the perspective of, let's let the people decide what they want. And right now, I believe that the Palestinians have decided that they don't want a two-state solution, and they've decided that they want to attack Israel as much as possible and continue to use any resources. We gave them Gaza. They have the West Bank, or Judea and Samaria, and they've turned that into, different ways to attack Israel. And that is the reality. So they've chosen they don't want a two-state solution, and trying to force them into that is a bad idea. For more, subscribe to the channel. If you want to help us make more of these videos, you can go to buymeacoffee.com/JewishUncensored. If you want to go to our channel memberships as well, to get exclusive content, check that out. Thank you for watching, and have a good one.